Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. For the video today, I'm back with a video all about reading. I want to talk about how I read, how I access books, and also how I read the amount of books that I do, since this year I'm reading, or aiming for, 100 books. I'm going to talk all about that. I'll mention as well, I have done a similar video to this in the past, a couple of years ago, but I didn't really talk on all of these topics. So I'm going to go fully in depth this time. If that sounds interesting to you, please keep on watching. Now, you might know from my vlogs and other videos here or there that I do enjoy reading. I'd consider myself a pretty avid reader, and this has been something that has kind of happened and increased for the past couple years. I think, like most people, when I was in school, I read a lot and then just kind of tapered off as I got a little bit older, but then I fell in love with reading again about 4 years ago. In the time that I wasn't really reading, I'm sure I read books here or there, like the average person, maybe reading 1 book a year. I think I heard that statistic once, or maybe it's even less, to be honest. I believe in 2022 I read like 12 to 15 books, so that was the start of getting back into it and finding books that I liked. And I think at the time I was just getting books from the library and reading them on my phone. 2023 I increased my reading. I read a book a week and read 52 books. And then in 2024 I read 75 books. So that's, you know, about 1.5 per week. This year I'm aiming to read 100 books, and so far so good. I know it's only a couple months in, but I'm doing pretty good reading 2 books a week and aiming a little bit higher so that hopefully I don't fall off track if I have a quiet week here or there. That's it for a little introduction from me. I just have been thinking recently as I've been reading. I thought the other day how I sort of make it possible in order to read 2 books a week, the things that I do, and the fact that I don't spend too much money doing it, because reading can be quite expensive if you're buying books, and I read a fair bit for free, so I thought I'd share that with you as well. Alright, so I have the first tip here, and this is something that I've spoken a lot about on my channel, so I'm going to try and be quick with this one and not talk too much about it, but it is of course the Kindle. Obviously any sort of e-reader, I'm just saying Kindle because that's what I have, but I love this thing and it has allowed me to read so much and read quicker, be able to read at more times throughout the day for so many reasons. Now, I know in my previous video similar to this, I spoke all about it then. I've spoken in vlogs. I love my Kindle. I love it so much, but I really do think it helps. Obviously, if you don't have one and you're starting reading, I would recommend getting the Kindle app or any sort of other reading app and read on your phone. Obviously, phones these days are pretty big. I'll mention as well, this is the Paperwhite, so it's slightly bigger than the standard. The standard Kindle, I'd say, still is great, and I had that for a long time. I just felt like upgrading because I wanted the waterproof version or the water resistant, and I gave the previous Kindle I had to my sister, so it's still getting used. But if you don't have a Kindle, honestly, reading on a phone is also really good, but what I'm trying to say is reading on the Kindle is super helpful for a variety of reasons. Obviously it is compact. I'd say it is similar size to a lot of paperbacks, but a lot thinner, a lot lighter, and just easy to carry. And obviously instead of carrying multiple books, I've got hundreds on here, and I think it can fit thousands, so that is so helpful to begin with. Very early on I noticed I read so much quicker when I was using the Kindle, and also just happened to pick it up a lot more versus paperback books when I read those, since it is, I guess, just a lot easier to have on hand. I know that there's many different cases people put on, or sometimes they don't have cases, but I would definitely say that having a Kindle to hold is a lot easier than a book. Obviously being able to lie down on your side or lie down in general reading is a lot easier than trying to read with a paperback, not to mention being able to read at night. Obviously this is backlit, and obviously it's got the nice technology of not emitting blue light, and it's purely just an e-reader, so you don't have that temptation of using other apps or doing other things on your phone or tablet. So that's one perk with this, the fact it does less, but a little bit less distracting. I could honestly talk on and on about how much I love the Kindle, but I'm going to try and reel myself in. I just want to finalize by saying I love the fact that when I'm excited for a book and see something I want, I can get it right away. Maybe that's a negative thing, speaking to my impulsive nature or something, but I love the fact that you can get it instantaneously. You don't need to go to the bookstore and wait or wait for something to come in online. I also love the fact that it is a minimalist option because it is just this one device. Even though having a library and lots of books would be nice, I love the look of it, I don't have the space for it, and I don't think it's super practical. I just find this so much more practical for me. Again, if you are a real book or paperback, hardback reader, that's totally fine. I get it. I do like the feel of a book in my hands, but I get over that very quickly. The only other thing books have that the Kindle doesn't is the smell, but that's, I think, a small thing in the grand scheme of things. It's obviously also great because it's travel friendly, having so many books in one tiny device. I think it's great to travel with versus bringing lots and lots of books because they get heavy and take up room. That is actually the reason why I got my mother-in-law onto an e-reader. I gave her a Kindle and she was a bit apprehensive at first, and now she's obsessed with her Kindle as well. I thought I'd mention too, this Kindle is actually the Paperwhite, and I didn't upgrade for any super serious reasons. I just wanted to pick it up during the Prime Day sale. I thought I'd get it since it is water resistant. I don't think it's waterproof, but I upgraded to the Paperwhite. So the water resistant factor and also a couple extra functions with the lighting or colors of the background was appealing to me. But honestly, the original Kindle worked so well for me for such a long time, I gave it to my sister, that one. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for Kindle. I tell everyone in my life about it. I've even gotten my husband into reading, and he never really used to be a reader, but I've made it easy for him. He uses the iPad and reads on the Kindle app. I've set him up, I've given him all my tips, and this is a man who's gone from not a reader to reading pretty regularly. I think he's read like 6 books this year so far. I'm gonna reel myself in here. I know I keep saying that. I obviously am a big fan of the Kindle and ebooks in general. I definitely heavily recommend them for reading. It just makes life so much easier. I wanted to talk about another factor in how I'm able to read as much as I do, and that is the fact that I know what I like. And that might be author, genre, subgenre, and tropes, but also bearing in mind what I don't like in the same sort of categories. Also, another important point I feel to mention is not to be afraid to DNF or stop reading something if you're not feeling it. I normally persevere, but I think it's because I choose books I'm pretty sure I'll like, but here or there I have given up on books when they're not my thing. I think that's really important because obviously maybe you could try and read many numbers in the year and maybe you won't enjoy them all, so it just seems like a time waste. I really think it's important to stick with what you like, and if you're not feeling it and can't feel the need to push through, don't force yourself because that can really put you into a reading slump. An example of what I really like is thrillers. I like domestic thrillers, and I suppose the ones that are a little bit more out there, not average run-of-the-mill thrillers that are grounded in reality. I like the plot points typically of things with amnesia, family mysteries, holiday thrillers, cheating spouses and that sort of thing. Just very dramatic ones with lots of twists and something a little bit more out there. So again, not more of a drama thriller, definitely more shit thriller, as I've said. Again, that's not a knock, I just like the more zany ones. I also like to buffer the thrillers that I read with celebrity memoirs, maybe a sweet rom-com, something that's not too spicy, just very easy to read, classics, and also light fantasy books. Obviously I touched on it there, but I do know that I dislike heavy, spicy books. It's not my thing, and I also haven't really found that I like contemporary fiction, just because I find it a little bit boring, if I'm perfectly honest, but that's just me. Now I wanted to talk about how I read all of these books and how I access everything. Obviously I read predominantly on my Kindle. It tends to come with me everywhere I go, and obviously the charge lasts a long time, so I don't need to worry too much about charging it and being without it for too long. On that note as well, I really want to quickly mention Kindle accessories. I personally do have the Kindle arm and clicker. I was a bit apprehensive when I first picked it up, but it was a total lifesaver when I had COVID, when I've been sick, or just if I want to lie down and read. It is so nice. In fact, the Kindle arm has been so appealing that my husband has stolen that. He's using that, so I might need to buy a second one. but it's so nice to be able to read and just click away with the clicker or press and have the book hovering in front of my face or my husband's face when he reads. I know it sounds lazy because it is, but I do think that they are helpful, not an essential by any means, but if you do a lot of reading, obviously it does help. Another way that I do access so many books is by audiobooks, and I know that can be a little bit controversial. Some people don't consider it reading, and obviously it's not reading with your eyes, but it is accessing books. And I do enjoy audiobooks from time to time, especially if it is maybe an audiobook written by a celebrity, like a celebrity memoir with them narrating. I think that's quite preferable as opposed to just reading it. I like hearing their voice. Or maybe if it's a big cast, I also tend to gravitate towards audiobooks when there's a lot of people with maybe a lot of different voice actors within the story. For audiobooks, I do have the Spotify and Audible subscriptions, but there is also a way that I get free audiobooks for every book that I typically read, which I'll touch on in a minute as well. So sometimes that also comes in handy if maybe I'm reading on the Kindle in a loud environment. I can switch it to audiobook as well and hear it at the same time. Or maybe if I'm loving a book and want to keep reading but maybe have to cook, or if I'm driving, I can continue enjoying my book as audiobook by doing a certain method, which again I'll touch on in a little bit. I have timestamps down below, so skip forward if you want, but I promise that won't be far. I think as well audiobooks really come in handy if I'm doing a large day of cleaning or yard work and just want good entertainment. That's when I would typically lean towards an audiobook for a couple hours versus listening to music all the time or a few podcasts. I think that an audiobook can be really good to do those sort of mundane tasks. Now, in terms of when I read, I do try to read 2 books a week. So normally I break this up by reading 1 book throughout the week. That will be a combination of reading on my lunch break, sometimes reading here and there on my phone or Kindle in 10-minute bits instead of scrolling on my phone like I might have done in the past. I will pick up my book, especially if it's a good one, and read just because that's more exciting to progress in the story. And I suppose as well there is a dedicated night each week that I do set aside to read. It's really nice. My husband and I sit together and each read our, respective books. I think that's quite enjoyable and something to break up watching TV throughout the week. So there's a couple different times within the week when I read, and I can normally finish 1 book in the work week and also 1 on the weekends. So that might be more so sitting around for a couple hours at a time, enjoying a book on my reading bench or laying out on my picnic blanket in the sun, which is my favorite spot to read, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's how I'm able to do 2 books a week. Now I wanted to talk about how I access books in more of a financial sense, the subscriptions that I have, how I get books for free as well, and everything around the finances of reading. And obviously this is a little bit different to people who buy physical books. That is not me. I do maybe buy 1 or 2 books a year if I really love them and want the actual physical copy, but most of these things I'm talking about are as digital media. So I do have a few subscriptions that I do pay for, and some that are ones that I kind of pay for purely for books, and then obviously there are ways that I access books for free, which I'll touch on as well. Now, one of the big ways that I do a lot of reading is through Kindle Unlimited. Obviously it does have a cost associated, and it is just reading technically as many books as you want on that subscription, even though you can only rent out, I want to say 10 or 20 at a time. I really wish I could remember. I know that my request list is full, but I've got books bookmarked there to sort of pick up later. So however many you can rent out at a time, if you will, is however many you can hold, but you do have the option to return books and rent more, if that makes sense. So that's the way that it is unlimited. It is by no means an exhaustive list of every book out there. There is a limited grouping of books that you can get, and it is all different country to country. So I obviously live in Australia. There are different books that I've seen people talk about in the US being on Kindle Unlimited that sadly we don't have access to here, and maybe vice versa. But I think it's quite useful if you do a lot of reading, since there are quite a few books on there. One good thing to remember with Kindle Unlimited is the fact that it does normally have a free trial to start. I don't have any sort of code or anything, but a lot of people do on YouTube, and I always see the ads on Instagram about new people to Kindle Unlimited getting 3 months for free or something like that. So I do recommend checking it out if you are thinking about trying it. Make sure you get a good deal to test it out to see if it's worth it. Another subscription that I happen to have for reading is Audible, and I've had this for a few years. I feel like I've said a few times on my channel even, and been thinking for a long time, I probably should cancel it because I have so many ways to access books, and obviously there are many more ways that I'm going to talk about, but I think this will be the push. I might cancel it for myself just because I don't feel I need it, but it is obviously a preferential way for people to access audiobooks, and I think it's a good way for people to dip their toes into reading and books in general. But I think for me personally, it's something I've had for a long time and I do enjoy. I just don't think I should keep spending the money on it, considering, again, there are so many ways that I access books in other ways. And obviously I have one subscription already to reading, so maybe I will take a break, at the very least from Audible, and bring it back in the future if I really feel the need. Yeah, I think that's going to be the push. After I do this video, I might cancel my subscription just because there's still a lot on my list of ways that I access books. Now, another way that I access books with paying for them is buying single books here and there, and that is under a few provisions, one of which being if I'm really interested in a book and can't get it anywhere else on Kindle Unlimited or other means that I'm about to mention later down this list. Again, I access books in a variety of ways, but if I can't get it for free or for cheap, I will pay for it. If it's an author that I'm obsessed with, I will pay for it, like a new release, Riley Sager, I'll pretty much always get those, but otherwise I will check to see if I can get it anywhere for free or potentially wait until it comes out. But if I'm super excited, I don't mind paying the money. Likewise, there are sometimes books that I come across on a whim and I might want to read to pay for on Kindle without getting them from the library, waiting for them if I can normally get them on a deal, because there are obviously the Kindle daily deals. I want to say like a $2 deal, a daily deal, and obviously every now and then, like twice in a year, there are those big Kindle sales, or Amazon sales rather. So there are a couple ways that I try and get books for cheap if I'm actually going to purchase them outside of the free and subscription methods. There's also 2 ways that I access books that I kind of pay for. This is by Prime Reading, and I think this is slept on a little bit. Oftentimes I feel people forget about Prime Reading. If you have a Prime subscription for the shipping or for the streaming service, although I feel like most people would have it for the shipping and the streaming service is just a perk, they have the same sort of thing for books. So there is a way very similar to Kindle Unlimited that you can rent out books, and I think for them as well, you can read as many as you want. You can just hold only so many, and they have a bit of a smaller catalogue than Kindle Unlimited, but I find it's pretty good on there. I have found some winners in there, and I do think it's important to check out if you have Prime subscription. Have a look to see what's on Prime Reading. I utilize that quite a bit, and I think it's important to remember that because it is very easy to forget and overlook. Another one that is a kind of pay for is Spotify. So obviously myself and Brendan have this for the music, but I think last year or maybe the year before that, still it's been in recent years, Spotify brought out audiobooks on their platform, and that is quite useful as well. If you are the main account holder to a family plan, or if you have the premium plan, I want to say, you have access to like 10 or 15 hours a month. I really wish I'd done better research here, but you get access to at least 1 audiobook a month on Spotify, and obviously that is something that you may be paying for already and not utilizing, or potentially something that you could sign up for if you want to listen to at least 1 audiobook a month. I feel like you could maybe listen to 1.5 or 1 and a short, like 1 full length and 1 short audiobook for that sort of time frame. I have seen there are ways to do top-up hours. I haven't played with that, so I can't speak on it, but there are ways to do top-ups as well. The only thing that I do know is that on this shared account that I have with my husband, I'm the only one with audiobook access, and he does not have that. I think you can pay extra for it, but we haven't done that. I'm the only one with access, and that works fine for us. I'll be honest, the way we set up our Spotify originally Brendan was the one with the audiobook access every single month, and he wasn't using it, so we had to re-sign up for Spotify with me as the main account holder, so I would use it since he wasn't listening to audiobooks on there. It just worked out for us, but that's something important to mention. If you have access to it, it might only be the main account holder unless you pay extra or something like swapping like we did in our house. Alright, now I'm going to talk about the ways that I access books for free. The first of which is probably the most exciting one that maybe not everyone knows about, but I want to shout from the rooftops. This is NetGalley. It is a way to access books for free, advanced reader copies from many well-known authors or new authors that you haven't discovered yet. And this kind of sounds too good to be true. The only catch, if you will, is the fact that you review them to access these books. So if you get access to a book, the idea is you're meant to review it. And the more you review, the more you get approved for, the higher chances of it anyway. I've been approved for quite a few books on there from authors that I love and books that I've heard a lot about that I was really excited to get access to. And obviously I was very happy to read them and review them. And on the flip side, there are many books as well that I wouldn't have heard about otherwise if I hadn't seen them on NetGalley and just taken a chance, and many books through that way that I've found and loved as well. So I definitely recommend that. I think anyone can sign up if you link it to your Goodreads. If you have some sort of platform, like obviously I do YouTube in a limited capacity, I just use that method to review the books on Goodreads and say that I talk about them on YouTube as well, because obviously I do. Again, the more you read and review, the more you have the opportunity to read and review, so I do really recommend that. Another way that I access books is by sharing with friends. So again, I'm not heavy on the physical media, physical books, but I've definitely lent the few books that I have out to friends and borrowed some. I think it was last year that I borrowed Throne of Glass from my sister-in-law, and I read the first two in paperback, and it was a long time since I'd read paperback, but I read those when she lent them to me, loved them, and because I wanted to keep reading, I did get them on Kindle, but it was just nice to be able to share books with someone and have them lend them to me, I suppose. That's obviously a free method that is very easily accessible if you know anyone else with books and maybe you have books that you want to share. It's especially nice if you're sharing books that you love and want your loved ones to enjoy as well, or maybe they can lend you their favorite books too. I think that's really important to remember and probably the most simple way to read. Along those lines are of course the little free libraries. I have two on my dog walking path with my dogs every day. I'll be honest, I don't take books out of them, but I check in there religiously just in case I find something that I'm excited about. Again, it's maybe a little tricky because I'm purely gravitating towards reading on the Kindle, but I love to look in there and see if I can get any reading ideas. But for people who aren't married to the Kindle, obviously check local free libraries, and obviously, how could I forget, the big library, your local library. I think that is really helpful to access since I feel like everyone can sort of get to one. There are so many around, and I think it's quite nice just to visit and look. Even as a Kindle reader, I still like to look in bookstores too, just to see the physical books and obviously get some ideas on what I can read on Kindle and potentially borrow physical books as well. In terms of being a Kindle reader, you don't have to miss out on the perks of a library because there are ways that you can still access books on your Kindle or e-reader. Again, I'm using the word Kindle, but just consider me saying e-reader anytime I say that. You can still access books on your e-reader or Kindle from the library, I think in most countries. I know that there are a couple different apps across the world, but just talking from my own experience, in Australia we have access to Libby and BorrowBox. I think those are the two main ones. Maybe there's others. If there is and you know about them, let me know in a comment down below. But BorrowBox and Libby are the two main ones. With Libby as an app on your phone, you can borrow books from the library just by linking it up with your library card and send books directly to your Kindle if they're an EPUB file, which majority of them are. I have come across a few books here and there which are different file types and that's not compatible, but for the most part, pretty much anything, like 90% of what I've borrowed, I've been able to send to my Kindle, and then it's there and disappears after the rental period. With the other app, BorrowBox, That one, as far as I know, doesn't have compatibility with Kindle. I think it might with other e-readers, but certainly if you have the app on an iPad or your phone, you can access audiobooks very easily, or obviously just reading on your phone through that app, because that's how the books are accessed, through the BorrowBox app itself. I suppose in the instance of somebody using an iPad, they kind of have the upside there, just being able to access books directly, or potentially other e-readers. Alright, now I'm going to talk about how I turn pretty much every book I read into a free audiobook if I want to. And I thought the easiest way to do this would be by doing a screen recording. So I'm just showing you how I do this on my iPhone. I feel like there would probably be a similar way through Samsung, but obviously I don't use that, so I'm not exactly sure. I'm just talking you through how to set this up on iPhone. Now, the first thing that I do is open up settings in my phone and going to accessibility and then spoken content. Now I turn on speak selection and also speak screen, and then that opens up this little window on the screen. I've got it down there, which I find pretty helpful if I want to change where it's sitting. Also, if it doesn't pop up, just make sure speech controller is on. But now I've got this set up. Yes, I do have it set at 1.6 speed because I feel like I read really quick and I want the audio to go pretty quick as well. Now, I'll be totally honest, it doesn't sound exactly like a professional voice actor. Why would it? But I feel like it's really good for certain circumstances where I want to continue a book if I'm driving or cooking, or maybe like reading my book in a noisy environment just to hear it as well through headphones or whatnot. So that's the situations where I use this, and I find it pretty helpful. Now, there are a lot of languages available. I do listen to it in English, obviously, but plenty of options, obviously, on iPhone there, and then even voices. So there are more masculine and feminine voices. I haven't looked at the advanced options or enhanced, but yeah, plenty of options, plenty of accents, and I feel like that's kind of helpful for when I am listening to different books. Sometimes I change up the voice depending on the style of the book, also the pitch of voice, speech volume, and the speed. Again, I listen to mine at about the rate that I read, but you can totally adjust all of that. Once that little accessibility button is open, you can just open your book in the Kindle app, and then when you open the little tab and press play, it will start reading. And again, there is a little bit of tweaking. I feel like it sounds very robotic when you listen. Here's what it sounds like for me.
Those who find ugly meanings in beautiful things are corrupt without being charming.
So maybe some people will find that jarring, but honestly, I think it's quite suitable for when I want to listen to what I'm reading if I can't sit and use my eyes, or again, if I'm in a noisy environment. I feel like this is a really great, helpful way to continue my book, and it turns the page as well. So if you press play, it will page through every page and continue to read. So I just thought I'd share that as well. Alright, I have a few final points to mention before I wrap up this very long video. The first of which is probably the most important, and that's just focus on reading what you love. Finding out what that is can take a bit of time, but it is so worth it, and then just focusing on what you enjoy versus what everyone else is reading. It'll make it so much more of an enjoyable experience, I promise you. Another point I didn't get stuck into so much is the fact that a lot of the content I enjoy is around reading as well. So I like looking at book reviews, whether that is reading those or a lot of YouTube videos as well about books. I feel like that's majority of what I take in on YouTube, people talking about books. So that's why I enjoy doing this as well. But I think that helps, just having it on the brain. It gives me ideas on what to read, and I like hearing other people's reviews on things as well. So obviously it's a big interest, and I feel like a lot of my brain power is taken up with that. I don't know if this makes sense, but I feel like it helps me be more motivated to read when I hear people talking about it as well. So that's why I look for reviews and all of that content online. Last of all, because I have the big motivation to read so many books this year, and because I do enjoy it so much, and obviously have a lot of my sort of brain power within the week thinking about it, looking into it, I really do enjoy it, and it just becomes a bit of a spiral. I also just see it as genuine entertainment versus sitting down and watching TV shows and movies, which I obviously do. I also really love sitting down and reading. I find that relaxing, but I also just get really excited, and I love making lists of what to read, whether it's in the Goodreads app or putting new release books on my calendar. I think that really helps as well, just to have things to look forward to and get excited for new release books or books from authors that I'm excited about. Alright, now with that, I will be wrapping up this video here. I feel like it is quite a long one. I definitely needed a glass of water, but before I go, I just wanted to thank you so much for watching, especially considering it is a bit of a long video. I can already tell, with lots of changes throughout the video visually. I feel like I've had to stop and start a few times, so thank you for your patience. I also wanted to ask if you have any books that you're obsessed with at the moment, looking forward to, or have loved from specific authors or just books in general. Let me know in a comment down below, because I've got a lot of books to read this year and I love any recommendations. But like I said, I will be leaving you here. Thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye.